When we talk about women with a fuller figure, particularly those with a big A, most men stop at the surface. They notice the curve, the sway of her hips, the allure of her presence, and they immediately assume it's all about sex. But what many men still don't know is that her body is speaking a language, one far deeper than physical attraction. And very few men are actually fluent enough to understand it. A woman who carries her body with confidence, who is fully aware of the attention it draws, doesn't just move through the world, she influences it. Every gesture, every pause, every glance is intentional, not always for seduction, but often for self-preservation. Because when the world constantly stares at you, you learn to master your space, mentally, emotionally, and physically. You see, there's a kind of psychological evolution that happens when a woman is constantly under the gaze of others. She becomes hyper-aware, not just of how she looks, but of how people react to her presence. She learns to read energy, to walk into a room and instantly know who is seeing her and who is actually watching her. That difference matters, because while many admire her body, very few take time to understand her mind. And the truth is, she's often many steps ahead, emotionally and energetically. Her body has taught her how to navigate desire, attention, and sometimes even danger. That's why her presence feels magnetic. It's not just the shape, it's the energy she's learned to control through years of being studied, approached, misunderstood, or desired. So when a man approaches her with only lust in his eyes, she sees it instantly. When he tries to impress her with surface-level charm, she already knows how that story ends. What many don't realize is that a woman who owns her body, who moves in full awareness of what it evokes, isn't looking for more admiration. She's searching for something rarer, a man who sees beyond, a man who notices how carefully she listens, how intentionally she chooses her words, how her confidence isn't just in her walk, but in her stillness. That's the man who wins her trust. Because he's fluent in more than attraction. He understands energy, depth, presence. In a world obsessed with image, a woman's body becomes a mirror for how others view her worth. But the ones who truly see her, those rare few, realize that her power was never just in the curve. It's in the command, the emotional intelligence, the self-mastery. If you're only watching her body, you're missing the woman entirely. But if you can tune in to the language behind the movement, the awareness, the restraint, the softness wrapped in strength, you'll discover a level of femininity that doesn't need to be spoken to be felt. Sometimes the loudest part of a woman is the silence in her walk. Learn to listen to that. There's something we need to talk about, and not just skim over the way society tends to. Women with big A's are often placed under a cultural microscope, but not for who they are, for how they look, for how their bodies move. And let's be honest, this isn't about appreciation. It's about fetishization. Music videos glorify it, social media monetizes it, and yet somehow the woman behind it gets erased. She becomes the shape, the image, the fantasy. But what so many men don't realize is that she's been carrying the weight of that narrative long before anyone complimented her. And the psychological cost of that attention is something very few actually stop to understand. From a young age, these women are often seen and not truly known. Sometimes, even before they know what femininity fully means, they're already being sexualized. Their bodies enter rooms before their voices ever get the chance to. So they grow up learning to shrink parts of themselves to feel safe, or to magnify other parts just to be taken seriously. This constant push and pull creates a kind of emotional armor, a silent strength, a hidden sharpness. She doesn't just develop curves, she develops boundaries. Emotional ones, energetic ones. And unfortunately, most men aren't emotionally literate enough to respect them. What happens next is even more layered. Because society has painted her as hypersexual, she's automatically assumed to be more available, more open, more interested in attention. But often, The opposite is true. The more she's sexualized, the more she withdraws. Not out of insecurity, but out of exhaustion. Because when your body is always the conversation, your soul rarely gets invited to speak. She starts to choose her words carefully. She filters every compliment. She learns to measure intention in milliseconds. Because she's been approached enough to know when a man is leading with desire instead of depth. Here's where most men lose their chance. They think they need to flatter her physically to get her attention. But what they don't see is that she's already seen it all, heard it all, felt it all. She's been the subject of lustful stares, careless DMs, and shallow praise. And because of that, she's become more selective, more attuned to energy than effort. What she's really looking for is not just a man who wants her body, but a man who can handle her presence. A man who knows how to honor what's visible, but is even more curious about what's invisible. There's something powerful about a woman who has learned to turn objectification into sovereignty. She may have been reduced to a body by the world, but she refuses to let that be the full story. She reclaims it. She wears her curves with pride, but not to invite attention, to command respect. And that's where the misunderstanding often begins. Men approach her like she's a prize to be won, not realizing she's actually a fortress. You don't get access just because you admire the view. You get access when you prove that you can see the architecture of her mind, the layers of her heart, the stillness of her soul. And I want to say this very clearly. Beauty is never an invitation to be simplified. A woman's body is not public property just because it fits into the cultural ideal of what's desirable. If anything, the more she's admired, the more she needs protection, not from others, but from the constant distortion of her identity. She is not here to be consumed. She is not here to be conquered. She is here to be seen, heard, felt, and valued on a level far deeper than the physical. So to the men who truly want to connect with a woman like this, understand what she's had to endure. Understand that her confidence isn't the result of being praised, but surviving being misunderstood. Learn how to listen to more than her laughter. Pay attention to what she doesn't say. And above all, bring more than lust to the table. Bring presence. Bring self-awareness. Bring emotional intelligence. That's what creates connection. That's what earns trust. Because at the end of the day, if all you see is her body, she will never show you her soul. It's easy to assume that a woman with a big A draws her confidence from the way the world reacts to her body. After all, she's constantly praised, stared at, and admired. But the truth, the deeper truth, is that her real confidence doesn't come from her curves. It comes from her mind. And that's the part most men overlook. While they're busy complimenting her figure, she's quietly observing whether their energy carries substance, whether their words are fueled by genuine interest or just desire dressed up as charm. She's not unfamiliar with attention. In fact, attention has been a constant companion. But admiration isn't the same as respect, and being desired doesn't always feel like being valued. That's why she's built her self-worth on something far more unshakable than physical praise. Her confidence is the result of self-mastery, of knowing who she is beyond what the mirror reflects. It's built on the books she's read, the silence she's learned to sit with, and the storms she's survived in private while the world only saw her smile. Men often approach her with the assumption that beauty makes her easy to impress. But for her, beauty has been both a blessing and a burden. It's taught her that not everyone who calls her beautiful sees her clearly, that not every compliment comes with pure intention. So, she listens closely, not to your words, but to your energy. She watches how you respond to her boundaries. She notices how you talk to others when you're not trying to impress. Because a woman like this isn't just attracted to looks or status. She's drawn to presence, to integrity, to emotional maturity. And no matter how flawless your words may be, if they lack soul, she'll feel it. This is why many men fail to connect with her on a deeper level. They assume her body is the access point. But access isn't granted by admiration. It's earned through emotional resonance. She needs to know